The Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by former guest of the show and Matt Landowski and Sweet Hand Sports. Our mission at Sweet Hand Sports is to gear you up for greatness. With our top tier gloves, you are set to grip, win, and dominate. Grip your victory and leave your mark on the game. Sweet Hand Sports brings you batting gloves and now golf gloves that are designed to be durable and breathable. Go to sweethandsports.com, use the promo code BONO10 and save yourself 10%. Grip your victory at Sweet Hand Sports. Once again, sweethandsports.com, promo code BONO10 to save yourself 10%. The Ride Home Rants podcast is also brought to you by Buddy's Beard Care. Buddy's Beard Care provides premium men's grooming product at an affordable price. Products are made in Ohio, and Buddy's Beard Care supports local. The majority of their suppliers are from other Ohio-based companies. You can find them on social media at Buddy's Beard Care or online at buddysbeardcare.com. He has sent me a complimentary bottle of their beard balm. My beard has never felt softer. It has never been more tamed and has never grown faster or looked healthier. I've been using these products for a little while now, and I love every minute of it. Once again, buddysbeardcare.com. Use the promo code Mike Bono and save yourself 15%. Next, we are brought to you by Tactical Brotherhood. The Tactical Brotherhood is a movement to support America. We believe that there is a gap in focus when it comes to companies that support America. We want to be the front lines of supporting Americans and are determined to find something worth being proud of in every aspect of our military, starting with the men and women who serve and protect us. Our mission is simple: to unite like-minded individuals by celebrating what makes each one of us unique Americans. You don't have to be a veteran to join us. You just have to love America. Go to tacticalbrotherhood.com, use the promo code Mike Bono, and save yourself 10%. Once again, the tacticalbrotherhood.com, promo code Mike Bono, save yourself 10%. Next, we are brought to you by Deemed Fit, a clothing company brought to you by first responders for first responders. They are a clothing apparel company that helps those who have worked through the COVID-19 pandemic and also for all the first responders with their mental and physical health. Deemed Fit donates 100% of their net profits from the Never Forget collection sales to the Tunnel of Towers Foundation to support those from 9/11. Once again, go to deemedfit.com. Check out all of their great products. All of them have great messages. They fit and look great. Use the promo code Mike Bono and save yourself 10%. By supporting Deemed Fit through your own purchase, gifts bought for your friends, family, and colleagues, or by becoming one of our brand ambassadors, you become part of the Deemed Fit family. Don't miss out on this great way to help and support everyone who has helped and supported our country. Deemedfit.co, promo code Mike Bono, and save yourself 10%. Next, we have Shankit Golf. Shankit Golf is golf apparel made for the everyday golfer. We're not going to go out and shoot a 6 under par. We're probably going to shoot a 6 over par, but we are going to give you the gear to help you rock it on and off of the course. Our goal here at Shankit Golf is for everyone to have a great time on and off of the course, and we're going to help you look great while doing it. Go to shankitgolf.com, use the promo code Mike Bono, and save yourself 10%. Once again, shankitgolf.com, promo code Mike Bono, and save yourself 10%. Lastly, the Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by Web Western. Web Western is for those who roll up their sleeves and do what it takes to get the job done. The arrow serves as a constant reminder to be a straight shooter, no excuses, no bullshit, just honest hard work. It's a brand that reflects the passion within us to lend a hand when it is needed, fight to protect our God-given rights, and live life like there is no tomorrow. Be a straight shooter. Now, let's start the show.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Ride Home Rants podcast. This is your special guest host, Fiddy, on the ones and twos today, bringing you a very, very special guest and a legendary coach, not just in Northeast Ohio, but in all of Division III wrestling. Before we dive into the show, though, with this great coach, make sure you peep all of our sponsors in the pre-roll, as we redid the pre-roll, so you definitely want to peep them. They're all great sponsors for us, all small business owners, and then stay and check out the post-roll as well, so with some great info from Mike. Also, make sure you're checking out all of our shows from the past 5 seasons, and this season being season 6. We are halfway through season 6. It's crazy, over 300 episodes of the Ride Home Rants podcast. So make sure you're checking all the great guests out, all the roundtables, and all the time that we grew from 2020 really through now in 2026. Without further ado, though, I'm going to jump into today's show with a legendary coach, and he's even a better guy than that, and just a great man, Coach Jamie Gibbs from Baldwin Wallace University. Jamie, thanks for joining the show today.
Thank you. Thanks for the kind introduction. I appreciate that. So let me get this straight. It's Fiddy, Fiddy.
That is right. That's been my nickname since I've been 15 years old. It's been with me for 24 years. So what happened was I was walking home in 9th grade, and a couple guys I went to school with were sitting on the front porch of the one guy's mom's house, and they were like, Jay Fiddy from the city, as a joke for, John Falcone. So they say it. Then from there, right, they just started saying Jay Fiddy from the city in school. Then it went down to Jay Fiddy. Then it went from Fiddy from the city. Then it just went to Fiddy. And then now 24 years later, pretty much everyone who I know in social circles in this podcast knows me as Fiddy. A lot of people never even knew my name was John or Johnny for a long time. So there's your fun fact of the day, Coach.
Well, when I asked Steve Thompson for your cell phone contact, that's how it came, Fiddy.
Yep. Steve's always called me.
And he said, yeah, I only know him as Fiddy.
Yep. So Steve's always called me that. Shout out Steve Thompson, former guest of the show and the director of athletics at VW. But yeah, so that's my little background with the nickname. So Jamie, you're originally not from the state of Ohio, but you are well traveled and you're here now. So talk to the listeners out there about where did you grow up and what were you involved in as a kid and through high school?
Yeah. So I grew up in Rickardsville, Iowa. It's about 12 miles north of Dubuque, Iowa, northwest of Dubuque, Iowa. Very rural area. I went to Western Dubuque High School and grew out in the country where, lived on a gravel road and, cornfield in the backyard, forest on side yard, forest in the front yard across the gravel road, and cornfield and hayfield on the east side as well. So yeah, grew up there and then did played sports growing up, did baseball. My dad was my baseball coach growing up, played football, and then just stuck with wrestling probably after my sophomore year. Wrestled in college at Iowa Central for 2 years and then to Coe College for 2 years, and then got my master's degree at University of Wisconsin La Crosse, and then got my first full-time coaching job at Coe College in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And from there, got my first head coaching job in Pembroke, North Carolina at UNC Pembroke. And then, I just completed my 15th year here, Johnny. And so 15 years ago in August, I'll have lived in this August. When August hits, I'll have lived in Ohio for 15 years. So it's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's a heck of a journey from Iowa to Wisconsin to North Carolina and Ohio. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about Iowa. Now we had a couple legendary Hawkeye football players on this show previously. Ricky Stanzi, the winningest quarterback in Iowa football history, 3-0, 3 huge bowl game wins, and one of the greatest defensive backs in Iowa football history in Jovan Johnson as a 4-year starter out there, former NFL player, former CFL player. Both those guys did play in the NFL. So, I wanna ask you this: are you an Iowa or are you an Iowa State football fan?
Yeah, Hawks all the way.
Okay. So then,
no Cyclones. We
so then you probably know about Ricky and then Jovan being there, and they spoke nothing but great things about University of Iowa. And actually, a funny story: I was going through Iowa about 5 years ago. We drove to Omaha, Nebraska from Cleveland. Sure. And we drove right through 80, exactly the whole way. We stopped in University of Iowa, and I thought it was a nice campus. I don't think it was over spectacular though compared to some of the other Big Ten schools. So I do give the University of Iowa a lot of credit for the success they have in all their sports with not having campuses like Penn State and Ohio State. But anyways, what I want to ask you though about Iowa is when we were driving and it was nighttime, all we seen was these blinking red lights out of nowhere. And we were like, what is this? Is this like an alien spacecraft or something? And here it was like the wind turbines, so planes don't hit them. So was that like a common thing, like growing up, to seeing just in the darkness those red blinking lights because of all of that there?
I don't recall that, but
Okay,
sounds right.
because it was like terrifying. It was like, what are these like hundreds, if not thousands, of red blinking lights? And it's like, what is this? This is like crazy. And then finding out it was like the wind turbines when I looked it up. But so tell me though, with Iowa, with its like rural density and yet some other areas that are well populated, what are the high schools like there? Are they like by county? Are they by city? Like what was your high school like? Was it like a bunch of like rural areas added into one school?
Yeah, so Western Dubuque, if you do a Google search, I know at one time they were on like Good Morning America for their bus routes. Like in one day, the number of miles that all of their school buses travel goes all the way across the US of A. It's that large of a school district. With all this, it's a whole bunch of small towns getting bussed in from 15 to 20 minutes away.
Wow. Okay. And I know some of the more rural areas in the United States do have that, right? It's like they put a bunch of the smaller areas in there, but I know it definitely can create a strain on busing, and the transportation. So you stay at home, in Iowa, you wrestle, in college, and when you finish up wrestling in high school, you go on to college. What was that experience like? Being a college wrestler, at the community college level, and then the 4-year level.
Yeah, so I think coming out of high school, I was not I hated school. I was a terrible student. I graduated high school with a 2.0, and I had to go to community college. Didn't even want to go to school. I had zero, didn't know what I wanted to do. I was a very young, immature kid, but I enjoyed wrestling, and thankfully I knew I really wanted to wrestle in college, but again, being a terrible student, I went with the junior college route was my only option. And, with hopes of, I wanted to wrestle at the highest level possible, and went there for 2 years. And my first semester, I was a 2.2. And then, I just started getting around the right people, and probably where I'm at today. After that, I never got below a 3.0 again, and went on and even got a master's degree, which, I did not excel at the high school level, but again, getting around the right coaches, the right people, probably again, why I do what I do today, the some of the mentors that I've had, and the way they guided me and found my strengths, you know what I mean? And complemented my strengths, and just really helped me find my path. I changed majors 5 times. I had no idea what I wanted to do. No, didn't want to go to college, and, went on to get my master's degree. And so, I think doing what I do now, it's tough to know what you want to do at 17, 18 years old, know what you want to do the rest of your life. So that was that. And then, I went on and wrestled at Coe College. It was a remarkable experience. I had some unbelievable teammates and mentors and professors, and then, so the guy I wrestled for, he was a 3-time All-American at Iowa for legendary Dan Gable. And so he was a world team member for Team USA. But, this guy, when I graduated from Coe College, he drove me 3.5 hours for a graduate school interview that got my master's degree paid for. And, then he hired me as the school's first ever full-time assistant wrestling coach. And, he was in my wedding. That's the type of impact he had in my life. And, so that was, that's kind of my journey into finding my career.
Yeah, no, I mean, and everyone has a really great life experience. And what's something we always talk about on this show, right? Like we want people on here who are relatable to the average everyday person, right? Because the experience of maybe being a bad high school student or not being quite prepared for college, but going on and then getting your associates and getting your bachelor's and getting your master's is way more relatable to the average everyday person, right? Than what Joe Rogan, for example, lives in his life.
Sure.
Big podcaster. So, the things you're talking about, I think, can hit home for a lot of different, people and their experiences. And definitely glad you found your way as a young person in that, in that, in that space. My college coach used to say this to our team back in a long time ago when I played, but he would say, not all of you are going to be academic all conference guys. Not all of you are going to be academic all American. Some may graduate with a 2.7, some may graduate with a 3.0. Some of you may hate school, some of you may love school. I'll never forget this, but he said, but if you love playing football, then you better find a way to stay eligible because without your grades, there is no football. And I think that was something that always stuck with me with that, and I took that into my coaching journey when I did that a long time ago as well. So you graduate, okay, you get your master's degree and you begin your coaching, experience, right? As an adult, as something that's paying your bills. So guide us through that, from the time you were in, UNC in that experience in their system to, being here at BW and the success you've had for 15 years. So guide us through what that journey has been like, not just as a career, but as a young man starting it, growing into a full-fledged adult.
Yeah, I think, again, just to touch on what you were talking about, if you really love football or you really love, I think, he talked about just being eligible, right? And I think that was always my mindset, just doing enough to stay eligible, right? Not really. And as I matured and got around, there's a lot of crossover in who you are as a person and as a man or as a woman and just who you are. And I think that started to click for me, that there is some significant crossover in just your character, and regardless of what it is, whether it's your favorite thing or your least favorite thing. So my first full-time college coaching position. So my master's degree was in exercise science with a concentration in adventure education. So the first job I had at co-college was probably 25% coaching, 25% teaching, 25% strength coach, and 25% running the fitness center and rec center. And so, kind of doing a little bit of everything. I loved it. And then I just really wanted to make that jump to becoming a head coach. And, got my first opportunity and had to move 18 hours away. And it was a big deal at that time for my family. We're all from Iowa. I had just started dating my now wife. And so, I moved to North Carolina, and then she decided she was going to come down probably, maybe 9 months later, 8 months, whatever, 6 months later. And then, yeah, we ended up getting married, stayed there for 5 years. And it was exciting, but very, she moved 18 hours away from her family. I moved 18 hours away from my family and had our first child down there. And then had this opportunity come up. And at that time, I didn't know much about Baldwin Wallace and small coaching world. The guy knew that I was looking and said, "Hey, you should really look at Baldwin Wallace. I don't know much about their program, but I know it's a great place." And just kept an open mind, and here I am today.
No, that's definitely great. And it's just crazy with coaching journeys, right? Like what people will do to make it work, like the 25%, 25%, 25%, 25% to move 18 hours and then, move 10 hours, north, but yet be closer back to Iowa. So no, that's definitely very, very interesting. How did you like your time though in North Carolina? Did you like it, like the weather and the setup and how
Loved,
everything was down there?
loved it. And it was an awesome institution. I had great mentors. And, you know, the UNC system is an awesome system. I loved it. We were probably about an hour and a half from about everything. We're about an hour and a half straight south of Raleigh, an hour and a half east of Charlotte, an hour and a half west of Wilmington, and an hour and a half north of Myrtle Beach, So we were in a great spot. I was teaching at the time, taught 6 hours there as well as coaching. And, you know, my wife, both of us being Midwesterners, and, I just really wanted an opportunity to find a place that would be great to raise a family. And that's not to say that North Carolina wasn't. It's just wanted to get back where wrestling, was really, really important, and had the chance to really, and while at that time Baldwin Wallace didn't have maybe the a largest tradition or a great tradition, but there was definitely tradition there. They were successful. There was a great football tradition. The location was incredible. And, honestly, I didn't really know much about BW. And when I looked up their program, they were falling on hard times as well, but got here, kept an open mind, and just the people, man, the people. And, you've been around me now for, my kids are here all the time. It's a great place to raise a family. My in-laws moved here. So it's been that, and that's what we were looking for, a place that could be the next step, but also could hopefully be, home. And that was just one thing I knew early on in my coaching career. I didn't want to be on that coaching carousel and trying to move all the darn time. So wanted some stability. And my wife and I were both Division III athletes. We had an awesome experience. She was a college softball player. And so this is a good fit for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Carolinas, and I've been there a couple of times. They are great, but it's a different type of lifestyle. It is very busy, especially where you're at. And we were just there not too long ago, back in December. A friend and I drove down to the Myrtle Beach Bowl and checked out the bowl game there. But it is a very busy area between North Carolina and South Carolina, where you come up to Ohio and it's a little bit more kick back. So you've been at BW going on 15 years, and actually one of your former wrestlers was also a guest on this show in Jaleel Richardson.
Yeah.
We got a chance to, coach with you, and you've known him from his time in high school to being the great guy and father and employee that he is. But you've really had to build that wrestling program from when, you first started to the powerhouse it is today. So I know there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in there, but how did you come in and you've seen this vision, right? But how have you executed that in these past 15 years, Jamie, to get to where you are today?
Man, I've just been so lucky to been able to surround myself with great people. You talked about Jaleel. Jaleel was part of my very first recruiting class. When I first got here, there were 6 kids on the team. So I got here in August of 2011. There were 6 kids on the team. Only one of those kids stayed with wrestling the next year. So basically we were, kind of starting over, and we brought in 3 straight classes of over 20 athletes every year. And that helped us really, solidify, getting our numbers to where, but during that time, we just was able to surround myself with great people. I've got a lot of great coaches, great administrators around me, but just really, you know, the people at BW, they just care. They might not love wrestling, but that they want to see people be successful, and just good Midwest people that want to help. And so I would say that's probably the biggest part of our success, is just being consistent with good people around us. I've had Bill McGrain help me for 14, 15 years, and some, guys like Jaleel, he was part of the first recruiting class, and I'm still very close with so many of those guys that some of them are still sticking around and helping me coach now, and
Sure.
we've just been very fortunate to keep good people around us, and it's the BWA, man.
Yeah, and it's so great that you talked about Jaleel with that, because when we had Jaleel on the show, I threw this out to him because I hosted his show, and he got a big kick out of it. Now, one of the former guests of the show, one of the original guests within the first, I think, 2 seasons that we did, is now a professional MMA fighter in Blake Perry. And you were Blake Perry's coach here as well. And Jaleel's teammate was
Yeah.
Blake. And Jaleel said Blake was one of the nicest people he's ever met. And Blake's been on the show, and his mom Danika's been on the show, but he also said Blake was one of the toughest human beings he's ever been around. And for anyone that doesn't know Blake Perry, go look up the fight when he shattered his nose and wanted to keep fighting.
Brutal.
But Will, what was that experience like, watching Blake come in, to now seeing him as a professional MMA fighter?
Wild. Yeah. Blake was, he was a machine. That guy would work out and work out and work out, practice be over, and he'd be on a treadmill. And, he was always trying to be the best that he can be. And one of my favorite Blake Perry stories is we were packing the bus and we're going down Interstate 71 on the BW bus. And the bus driver's light goes off that the back door is open, and we pull off to the side of the road, and we can see in the mirrors, and there's a bunch of Blake Perry's oranges bouncing down the interstate from his bag that fell out of the BW school bus.
That's great. I'm going to text Blake then and be like, hey, I heard that the bus had to pull over because of you.
Yeah.
When the oranges
You'll have
fell
to
out the bag.
also ask Blake about his shower experience at Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay. I will definitely have to send him a message, and I will make sure I send him the show when it airs too.
Yeah, you'll have to do that. Ask him about his shower in Nashville, Tennessee.
I will definitely ask him about
Blake was I'll little spoiler alert out. Blake was taking a shower and there was some raw sewage coming out of the shower.
Well, if you can survive that, you can survive a shatter.
That's why he's so tough.
That's why he's so tough.
Why he's so tough.
But Blake, great guy, and if people, just don't know him, go follow his career, and his mom, Danica, has been an amazing resource for the show too. So shout out to both of them. But when you got guys like Jaleel and Blake on your team, not only do you have a great team, but you're surrounded by a bunch of great people. So that's definitely awesome. So, Jamie, when you're going through this coaching cycle, right? You're getting guys in every year, right? And you're trying to build competition within the weight classes and the depth and things like that. What is the hardest part you think as a head wrestling coach compared to some other sports about trying to get depth pieces compared to, say, like when you're in football and you have 4 quarterbacks, right? But if you have 4 legit guys that wrestle at 189 or whatever it is, how is that balance as a head coach, trying to keep all those guys happy and getting mat time and getting that actual experience on the mat wrestling?
Yeah, it's tricky. I would say probably like the other sports, you got to make sure that, every person matters, right? So whether, and that we talk about that during the recruiting process. If you're looking for, a place where you can start the easiest, this might not be the place. But if you're looking for a place where you can be the best version of yourself and you're going to be held to that standard each and every day, both on and off of the mat, and have a lot of opportunities to launch your career, this could be a great fit. And I think, again, we have 12 coaches on staff, 10 to 12, most years. And those coaches are unbelievable mentors. So they're helping them. Everybody on our team is getting individual attention from all of the coaches, not just the primary coach, but that's not just on the mat. That's, with their careers and helping us help them leverage their BW relationships to open up doors for their career. And, I think making sure that they understand. I don't think we have many issues with it, honestly, Fiddy, as long as a kid really understands the value that wrestling can bring to his life beyond getting his hand raised, right? If they understand the same skills that we're gonna in the standard we're gonna hold them to is gonna one, it's gonna make him more competitive on the job market, make him a better father, better husband, and just they're gonna see not just growth on the mat, they're gonna see a lot of personal growth. And as long as they are, understand and they have that value, they're gonna feel loved here. They're gonna know that they're growing and getting better. Will they be the best guy at that position? Maybe, maybe not. But as long as they're working towards that, hey, that's what it's all about.
Sure. No, and that's a great point. And I think, when there's definitely overlap with like the team sports, right? Versus like the individual sports that are also team sports, right? There is some overlap with that, but yet it does get very unique, right? When you do have to coach the individual ones because you need so much attention, but you have such a large staff that definitely getting that mat time and that individual time with those guys, I definitely think is a huge plus for them and all the things you talked about, but it also helps with them wanting to retain here, at a school. And that's a big part of stuff in college people don't realize, right, is also retaining them. So, thank you for sharing that. Now, Jamie, we're going to kind of switch gears here before we finish up the last part of the show. I'm knowledgeable in wrestling, but there's a few guys I want to point out. I want to get your take on three of them. They're three of more of my favorite guys who have wrestled over time. So I got to start with, even though, you don't like the Cyclones, what are your thoughts on, Cal Sanderson? Is he the greatest Division I wrestler ever?
Yeah. 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 I mean, there's a couple guys here recently but you know, when I was at College, we had a match against Iowa State, and Cale wrestled, and got to follow his career pretty closely, being a Hawkeye fan, and he he I don't know how you can argue, especially now that there's some guys that have matched his credentials on the mat, won the 4-time champs as well, but he's the first to ever do it, and pretty remarkable. So yes, I'm in agreement. I agree with you. I still have a Wheaties box with Cale on it. So
that's a true fan right there. So next guy I want to talk about is probably, I think, to me, one of the toughest human beings ever, and that's Kurt Angle, winning that Olympic gold medal with a fractured neck from Clarion University. So what are your thoughts on Kurt Angle?
I don't know him as well, but yeah, stud, and good for him, man. He's made it big in the WWE world, hasn't he?
Yeah, he had a good career there. He's done some acting. He was in the MMA movie Warrior with Tom Hardy.
Yeah.
So he's done some good things there. But I always say, man, that could be the toughest human being ever to number one. And I always will say this: to win an Olympic gold medal in wrestling, you have to be tough. To do it with a fractured neck, you are superhuman. And then the last guy, one of my favorite, because for people that don't know, when the UFC first started back in the early 90s, they had a hodgepodge mix of guys. And there was a guy with a big, huge guy that came in, big mustache. He wore wrestling shoes, and he used to fight guys who would wear boxing gloves and everything else. And that is Dan Severn from Arizona State, one of the toughest people ever. And if you don't know who Dan Severn is, somebody YouTube Dan Severn USC body slams. Yeah. Dan Severn would take it and take you on a ride, and you did not want to go on that ride. What are your thoughts on Dan Severn?
Yes, I probably know him most from his MMA career, 100%. But I do know he had a wrestling background, and he was, when that was first coming up, he was the man and one of the toughest SOBs in the UFC. Yeah, he was unique. That's when UFC was really fun to watch.
yeah, for sure, right? Because you had guys like Dan Severn, right, who had some strikeability, but he was a wrestler his like whole life, and then he did some WCW wrestling, so he did the studio wrestling. But he's athletic and can move. But then you're getting guys like Royce Gracie in there, and you're getting guys like Ken Shamrock, and you're just getting guys who are wearing boxing gloves and no shoes and shoes.
And there was no weight classes, right? I mean,
there was no weight classes. and you were fighting these 1-day tournaments, and it would be wild. Like, and Dan Severn's in there just taking elbows to the head, and then once he got a hold of you and he start throwing you over his head around, you were definitely getting concussed because you were hitting that mat or whatever it was really, really hard with a lot of force.
Less rules then than there is now.
I think the only rules they had back then was it was like no eye gouging, and then it was like
No biting.
literally you just went until you were there. There was just unlimited time. It was wild.
There was knocked out.
It was wild. But Dan the B Severn, everybody definitely check him out. So going back to talking a little bit more about you, Jamie, and BW. So what was this past season like? You know, it seemed like you guys had a lot of success here this past winter. What was this past season like for you guys?
Oh, this past season was, if you look at it on paper, we had 6 dual meet losses, and it took us a while to really get things to come together and just really finished the season super, super strong. And it was a very fun and rewarding year from the standpoint of, we had just graduated 2 of the greatest wrestlers in BW history with Jaden Hinton and Michael Petrella, and both, Michael was a 4-time All-American, 3-time undefeated champ. Jaden was a 3-time All-American, returning finalist. Then we lost some other key seniors. So we really, we had some good high-end returning talent, but we had some spots we just didn't really know who was going to emerge. And we took some lumps early on, and we had some inconsistent performances. And I tell you what, I was so proud of our group of guys. It was just such a neat season in that, they just kept showing up and taking ownership and knew it wasn't their best, and could be tough on them at times. And they just got back to work. And, and sometimes when you're going through those things and you're trying to hold the standard, they're going, sometimes teams will start, finding reasons or making excuses and this group didn't do that. They just kept on showing up, taking ownership and trying to right the ship. And it took us a while to get the right guys at the right weight classes, to get the right guys healthy. And towards the end of the season, we had, guys just fought their tails off and just competed to the best of their ability for the most part. And, so it was a very rewarding season from that standpoint of just how it started and how it ended. And getting to watch that process was just very fulfilling.
No, that's
For them, and for them, I think they're extremely proud, as they should be, and I know the coaching staff was extremely proud, and this coaching staff is remarkable, and they just kept on pouring into these guys, and I think some good things happened.
No, that's definitely awesome. Jamie, I want to get your take on this too. One of the last couple of things we're going to talk about here, and we talked about Jaleel about this a little bit. Now, you've been around a lot of wrestlers, right? You've seen Cal Sanderson. You've coached at a lot of different places. What really is the difference between a Division III to Division II and to Division I wrestler, right? Those top-notch guys per division. What sets them apart, though, from being like a really, really good Division III wrestler, right, to a really, really good Division I wrestler? Is it the technical aspect? Is it the strength? Is it the footwork? With football, we know it's kind of height, weight, maybe something else. But what is it with wrestling that sets the divisions apart?
It's really the NCAA in terms of the institution, but there is certainly, the best Division III and Division II guys. There's no doubt they could compete at that higher level. At what level of success they're going to have, that's where it gets really dicey, right? But I would say the genetics, just the athleticism and pure raw talent of those Division I guys. They're very, very gifted athletically.
Sure.
They're very, very gifted athletically. So like you said, the genetics, guy with the same stature, Division I, Division III, but I think, some of the programs that do it best, I will put our wrestling experience against a lot of Division I and Division IIs, and how we develop our athletes on and off the mat, and the things our kids get to experience, the doors they get open, and things like that. But from a pure on the mat, coming out of high school type of guy, it's that pure raw athleticism, and or or that high level of skill, that higher level
Mhm.
skill.
Yeah, and it's something that's I think different from sport to sport, right? Because if you're not maybe a 6'3" quarterback, right, or 6'2", odds are, and you can't move in the pocket, odds are you're probably not going to be Division I, Division II. You may go down to Division III, have a really good success. In basketball, it's all about height, right?
Yeah.
Where the individual sports, when you get into like wrestling and track and field and swimming, a lot of those, and we've heard from different people, a lot of it does come down to just genetics, right? Some
Yep.
of it's technical, but a lot of it's like the genetic aspect of things.
Even the technical stuff, you get a really, really athletically gifted guy, they can pick up a sport like wrestling. It's such a repetition and feel sport that if they have that athleticism, they can pick things up pretty fast and make some pretty big jumps pretty fast in our
Sure.
sport. Yeah.
Definitely good to know there. So Jamie, if students are interested, in BW wrestling or just knowing more about BW, what would you tell someone of why BW, why Baldwin Wallace University could be a great fit for them?
Just if they're passionate, passionate, high character, want to be the best version of yourself, right? On and off the mat, athletically, academically, socially, and I'll put career in that academic bucket, access and year-round opportunities to improve and get better in all those areas all year round. I mean, I think that's the beautiful thing. Many of our competitors, Johnny, I feel like you got to sacrifice one of those three pillars. Maybe the social piece has got to sacrifice, and things to do and the conveniences, or you got to give up a higher end wrestling in order to get the higher end academics, or vice versa. Where at BW, you don't have to sacrifice. You can get a really high end academic opportunity that can open up a lot of doors career wise, and wrestle at a really, really high level and have a great time doing it here at BW with tons of conveniences and some really, it's a cool atmosphere here, this campus community and the Berea area, and the location speaks for itself. There's lots of things to do and a lot of doors that opens from a training and career standpoint.
Sure. No, thank you for sharing that. And if anyone's interested, definitely check out BW. And if you are interested in wrestling and you want to have a great experience, shoot Coach Gibbs a message here in an email. I'm sure he'll get
Heck
back
yeah.
to you. Want to talk to you a little bit.
Always recruiting, baby.
So before we finish the show here, we get into my favorite segment we've brought in about 5 years ago, and it is the Fast Fitty 5. It's 5 random questions that have nothing to do with this show, and we brought this in as a fun way to end the show. So, Jamie, if you're ready for the Fast Fitty 5 and 5 random questions, you can elaborate on them or answer them as fast as you want. We can get started.
Let's do it.
All right. Number 1. What is the hardest sport to win a gold medal at in the Olympics, but you can't say wrestling?
Curling?
Okay. I would
I know
probably say
nothing about it. That looks like
it does look hard. I would say archery, but that's definitely probably
or the one where they
probably
ski and then they got to shoot.
yeah, it was a good one too. Swimming too, Michael Phelps, gotta be like Michael Phelps. Okay, that was a good one. Number 2, are climbing trees overrated or underrated?
Underrated.
Okay. The best animal to have for a pet is?
Dog.
Okay, I would agree with that. Number 4, are fishing boats overrated or underrated?
Underrated.
Okay, interesting. All right, now I'm curious about this last
Not
one.
even close. Yeah.
I'm curious about this.
trees and fishing boats. You're talking about a guy from Iowa here.
That is true. That is true.
Those are
Now I'm
both
curious about
very underrated.
Okay. I mean, I definitely can get that. Last one I'm curious about this though. What's a better workout in your opinion for someone to do? Boxing or CrossFit?
Better depends on what your fitness goals are. I know that's not the answer you want. What I would choose, I haven't done much boxing. I'd choose a boxing workout right now. I've done the CrossFit stuff, but I don't know which one's better. I think they both have their value.
And I think both of them will make you throw up if you're not ready for
Yeah, 100%.
So that was the Fast 55, a little fun way to end the show there, Jamie. But before we let you go, we usually give our guests about 30 seconds or a minute. If there's anything you want to get out there, anything you want to promote about wrestling or anything you have going on or a good message about BW, we're going to give you about 30 seconds to a minute and the floor is yours.
I'm just super grateful for Baldwin Wallace and the relationships that it's provided, not only myself, but my entire family. Driving home from a Cleveland Guardians game yesterday, I had my father-in-law in the back seat, and he said to me, Jamie, we are sure glad that you are the head wrestling coach at Baldwin Wallace University, because we had no idea that Cleveland was such an awesome place, and the greater Cleveland area, it's a gem that a lot of people don't really know about. And there's so much to do here and so many things with the lake and Playhouse Square and all the pro sports. And man, we're so glad that you're the head coach. So I'm super grateful to be here and the relationships that, have been created through Baldwin Wallace. And of course, I appreciate the Ride Home Rants reaching out to me. It's always fun. So thank you guys.
Absolutely. We love it when a great message is said to end the show. So that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Ride Home Rants podcast. As always, if you like the show, be a friend and tell a friend. And if you didn't like the show, tell them anyways. I bet they like it just because you did it. This is Fitty signing off, and we will see you next week.
The Ride Home Rants podcast wants to thank you for listening and let everybody know that we do offer monthly subscriptions to help support the show in other ways other than listening and downloading each episode. What you will get with each subscription is you will get bonus episodes that aren't released to everybody. You will also have a chance to ask me anything each and every month where I will put out a special episode just to answer your questions. You will also get more exclusive content that is not released to everybody. To subscribe to the show, go and click on the link in the description of this episode, and I look forward to your added support and to help us keep this show going.